This lecture explains the audio recorder class. The audio recorder class and the video recorder class belong to the recorder privilege group. The audio recorder is basically the class that supports high-level audio recording. High level refers to the fact that the buffer control is automatically performed. You can save a file in an actual container file format, such as AMR or WAV. You can set the properties of the recording, such as the container format, the maximum recording size, the maximum recording time, and the recording quality. In addition, to control the recording, you can use the record, pause, stop, and mute functions. For file I/O operations, the create audio file, close, and cancel functions are provided. The audio record operation also uses the iAudio Recorder Event Listener class to notify the program when the state changes. The Event Listener object basically provides a function to listen to a state change when the recorder is started, paused, stopped, canceled, and closed. When the user-specified maximum time or maximum size is reached, the on-audio recorder end reached function is called. If the recording has a problem, the on-audio recorder error occurred function will be called. Now, let's take a look at the scenario to actually record audio using the audio recorder. First, we have to create and construct the audio recorder. At this time, we have to specify the listener object and input the device parameters for the audio recorder's construct function. In this example, the input device is the microphone. Then, we create the file to save the recording to and specify the target format and quality. We can start a recording by calling the start function of the recorder class. In this case, the on-audio recorder started function of the event listener object will be called. If a problem occurs during a recording, the on-audio recorder error occurred function will be called. If the pause function of the recorder is called by the user or by the program, the on-audio recorder pause function of the listener object is called, and the recording is paused. A recording stops under the following conditions. A recording stops when the recording has been canceled and the cancel function of the record class has been called. In this case, the on-audio recorder canceled function will be called. If a recording reaches the user-specified limit, the on-audio recorder end reached function will be called. In this case, you have to explicitly stop the recording in this function. Sometimes the stop function can be called in the middle of the recording. In this case, the on-audio recorder stopped function is called. And if the recorder completely stops, we have to call the stop function of the recorder in order to close the audio file. If this function is called, the on-audio recorder closed function of the listener object is called. Now let's take a look at the camera before explaining the video recorder. The camera class provided by bada belongs to the camera privilege group. The basic functions of the camera are taking a picture and providing a real-time preview. The camera supports the RGB and YCB CR color formats, provides control functions for the autofocus and flash, and provides adjustment functions for the brightness, contrast, exposure, ISO level, and white balance. For real-time previews, settings for the preview format, preview frame rate, and preview resolution are also provided. Now, let's see how we can perform a preview using this camera class. You can get a list of preview formats supported by the camera by calling the Get Supported Preview Format List N function, and then you can select one of the formats. To draw the camera's preview on the screen, you have to prepare the overlay panel. As the same with the video player, the preview is drawn in the background buffer of the overlay panel. In general, for a camera preview, you have to create a new form and set the orientation of the form to landscape. Then, you have to create a new overlay panel, add the overlay panel to the form, and set the form as the current form. After this, you need to acquire the buffer info of the background buffer of the overlay panel, pass it to the camera class, and then start the preview. I'll give you a brief introduction on the procedures to take a picture. To prepare taking a picture, create and implement the iCamera Event Listener object. Then, construct the camera specifying the parameters for the iCamera Event Listener and the camera device. Then, turn the camera on by using the Power On function of the camera. If necessary, you can set various camera options. For example, you can set the preview format, the preview resolution, the ISO level, the brightness, effect, contrast, exposure, and white balance. Finally, call the camera's Start Preview function, specifying the background buffer of the overlay panel. The preview will then start. When the picture is taken, the capture function of the camera is called. If the capture function of the camera is called, the corresponding event listener is invoked to deliver the captured image. To use the zoom function during the preview, you can use the zoom in and zoom out functions of the camera. There are two listener functions, the on-camera captured and on-camera previewed functions in the listener object. On-camera captured is the function that notifies the program that the picture's been taken successfully by the capture function of the camera. The on-camera previewed function is the function that's called for each frame of the preview. In the Start Preview function of the camera, you can define whether to use this listener or not. Next, let's take a look at the video recorder class, which uses the camera. Basically, the video recorder is almost the same as the audio recorder. Therefore, I'll explain it by concentrating on the differences. The most important difference is that the construct function of the video recorder receives the camera as a parameter, while the audio recorder receives an input device such as the microphone. To determine which codec must be used to make a video recording, you can get the codec list supported by the device by calling the getSupportedCodecListN function, and specify the required codec by calling the setCodec function. To specify the recording resolution, you can get the supported recording resolutions by calling the getSupportedRecordingResolutionListN function, and set the resolution by calling the setRecordingResolution function. The supported video quality levels are recording quality low, recording quality medium, and recording quality high. You also have to specify a parameter for whether to record audio whilst recording video. Finally, you can set the video format to either MP4 or 3GP.